Hi guys, and welcome back to Hack and Craft. In today's video, I'm going to show you a super useful little trick that I think you're really going to like. Now, soldering something together is probably something you've seen a lot of on this channel, right? But let me ask you this. Do you really think soldering copper and iron together is as easy as it sounds? I'm going to use some solder to join the copper core of an electrical wire to a metal washer. Yeah, that's right, a regular metal washer. So let's heat things up and see how well copper and iron bond together. All done. At first glance, it looks like the copper wire and the washer are firmly connected, doesn't it? But hey, don't let appearances fool you. This tells us one thing. Soldering copper iron isn't as simple as it seems. I've got an idea. Something just popped into my head. Let's give it a try together and see how it goes, shall we? First things first, let's take the soldering iron apart so we can clean it properly. You know, just like any other tool, a soldering iron needs regular maintenance too. Cleaning it will help it work more efficiently and last longer. I've already got a glass jar prepared right here. Now I'm going to pour some water into it. Filling it up about halfway should be just right. Next, I'll add a small amount of salt into the water. Adding salt like this is a simple trick, but it can really help loosen up any gunk or oxidation stuck on the soldering tip. Pretty handy, right? After that, let's give the mixture a good stir to make sure all the salt dissolves completely. You want the salt to mix thoroughly with the water. This will help create a mild cleaning solution that can work wonders on the soldering tip. Alright then, I've got a roll of solder wire right here. What I'm going to do now is wrap the solder wire around the tip of the soldering iron. Just like this, neatly and tightly. That should be enough. Once I've wrapped a good bit around the tip, I'll go ahead and snip it off. There we go. Now it's ready for the next step. Alright, now we got something that kind of looks like a little spring, doesn't it? Pretty fun, right? I'm going to pull both ends of the coil slightly apart, just like this, and then twist them together to secure it into place. That should hold everything nice and tight. All done. I'll set this aside for now and move on to the next step. I've got an old phone charging cable ready right here. It's a 5V charger, by the way. Let's go ahead and take it apart, shall we? First, I'll cut off the charging head. Yep, just like that, clean and simple. Now I'm going to use a knife to carefully split the cable down the middle. Just be gentle with it, so we don't damage the inner wires. Alright, now it's time to bring in a pair of pliers. Make sure to use a kind with a pointed tip. Okay? Let's carefully pry the wires apart. Just take your time and be gentle with it. We don't want to damage any of the inner copper strands. Just a little finesse here goes a long way. All done. Now, let me go ahead and cut away the plastic insulation on this cable. Inside, there are two small wires, and what I'm going to do next is strip off the outer plastic layer from each of them, just to reveal the copper wire hidden inside. This part might seem simple, but it's super important if we want a solid connection later on. After that, I'm going to twist the copper strands together, just like this. This step helps keep the wires neat and firm, and also makes it much easier to solder later on. Since this charging cable is pretty old, I'm going to test it first to see if it still conducts electricity. You know, with old cables like this, sometimes the wires inside might be broken or corroded without us noticing. So it's always a good idea to check before putting in more effort. Let's not waste time working with something that doesn't even carry current, right? I'm going to use a multimeter to test it, just to be sure. So what I'll do is hold the 2 copper cores of the charger wire against the 2 probes of the multimeter. Let's check it out. Oh, look, the needle is moving. That means the cable is still conducting electricity. Great news. Now, just a quick note. Because the current from a phone charger is very low, I'm using my bare hands here. But if you try this at home, please wear insulated gloves for safety, okay? Now I'm going to connect one of the copper wire cores from the charger to the spring-like coil that I made earlier. Remember that one? As for the other copper core, I'm going to wrap it tightly around the tip of the soldering iron, the part we took off earlier. Make sure to wrap it nice and snug so we get a good connection. This setup is going to be interesting. So stick with me and let's see what happens next. Now that I've finished wrapping the wire, I'm going to place the whole thing into the salt water jar we prepared earlier. And after that, it's time to plug it in. This combination of heat and salt water creates a kind of gentle electrolysis reaction, which helps loosen and push out any dirt or oxidation that's built up on the soldering tip over time. It's like giving your soldering iron a relaxing spa treatment. Can you see the bubbles forming? Let's just leave it like that for a while and let the cleaning process do its magic. In the meantime, we're going to move on to the next step. Now, I'm going to grab an old battery from my little battery stash box right here. I'm going to use a pair of pliers to carefully peel off the outer casing of the battery, just like this. All right, I've got quite a bit already. Now I'm going to cut the battery casing into smaller pieces and drop them into this plastic jar right here. This material is going to be an important ingredient for what we're doing next. That's not quite enough yet. So now I need to get more battery casing. I'll use the pliers to peel it off carefully. All right, now it's time to cut it up again, just like before. We want to make sure we have enough of this material for our project. That's enough now. Next, I have a bottle of toilet cleaner here. I'm going to pour a little bit into the container with the battery casings, and then wait a few minutes for the reaction to happen. This step will help break down the material. So let's be patient and watch what happens. Do you see the reaction happening? Usually, toilet cleaners contain hydrochloric acid, and battery casings are often coated with zinc. This zinc dissolves in the acid, creating zinc chloride. Zinc chloride is a highly hygroscopic compound, meaning it attracts moisture strongly, and it's commonly used in soldering and metal plating. After about 30 minutes, it should be good to go. Now, I'll check the soldering iron first. I'll carefully lift it out. Make sure to place it on a cloth so it doesn't get everything wet. Here it is, the tip of our soldering iron. All right then, let's go ahead and carefully unscrew it now. Take your time with this step. Then, wipe it clean thoroughly. Make sure to dry it thoroughly before putting it back on, all right? We don't want any leftover moisture causing issues later on. And remember, before putting it back together, use a cotton swab to clean the inside properly. This step is really important to keep your soldering iron working smoothly. Since the tip of the soldering iron is hollow and quite small, using a cotton swab is really the most suitable way to clean it thoroughly. It's just the right size to get into those tiny spaces without damaging anything. Oh, wow, it's really dirty, isn't it? But that's okay. Now it's all cleaned up and ready. That means we're done here. So let's put everything back together. Now, I'm going to turn on the soldering iron to give it a test weld. Let's see how well it heats up and performs. Here, I have two electrical wires. I've twisted their copper cores together tightly. Now, we're going to use solder to weld this connection point securely. Let's make sure it's solid and holds well. All done. The solder will dry really quickly. And now these two wires are firmly joined together. It's a strong, secure connection you can trust. All right, now let's move on to the important part. I'm going to solder the copper wire from this electrical cable to the black lug. First, I'll use a cotton swab to apply some solution I prepared earlier by soaking the battery casing in toilet cleaner. I'll carefully spread it on the area that needs soldering. This step helps the solder stick better and ensures a strong connection. Now, let's get started with the soldering. I'll explain a bit first. Soaking the battery casing in the toilet cleaner solution produces zinc chloride. This is a powerful flux agent. It removes the oxide layer from the metal surfaces during soldering, allowing the metal parts to make direct contact and bond much more firmly. This solution can also create a thin metal salt coating that helps the surface catch the solder more easily. Alright, now that the copper wire is firmly attached to the washer, it's time to move on to the next test. At the other end of the wire, I'm going to strip off the rubber insulation to expose the copper core inside. Now I'm going to solder this into the wire directly onto a metal blade. And don't forget, before soldering, it's very important to apply a bit of that zinc chloride solution we made earlier. This will help clean the surface and make the solder stick much better. Alright then, it's time to begin the soldering process. Let's get to it. And there we go, it's done. So today at Hack and Craft, we've shared with you a really handy tip, haven't we? This trick will be super useful if you're passionate about DIY projects. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming clever hacks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.